Oh, yeah. Ooh, maybe I should start streaming at some point. But this, this is why I be late sometimes. I just be watching crazy shit on YouTube. This is pretty. Oh, hey! Okay, like that and watch it later, guys. What's up? Let's do our test for audio first. Guys, what's up? At some point, but this is why I be late sometimes. I just be watching crazy. Yeah, we're good. We're good on that. Let's get to live. Let's mute this. All right, good. Thanks for those that who are. Thanks for those that are watching live, and thanks for those that are watching the playback. I really appreciate you. I say that every time because I actually do mean it. Like I know on the back end, people either catch pieces of it, skip through it, or what have you, and yeah, I get like 40, 50 views, which is like that's pretty cool to me. I don't even know if it's sometimes the same people coming in. I don't know how YouTube counts and keeps track. I would think they have it under control by now in terms of like how they count and everything like that. So, um, eh, for those 40, 50 people that do watch the streams, I appreciate you greatly. All right. First we started. Well, today we started off with a YouTube video that was pretty interesting that I'm going to be watching later. That was in my recommended. Yeah, but we got a picture, a parrotfish. So this is a fish. It has the beak of a parrot. Nice colors too and everything. I kind of like it. Kind of dark, a little bit. Darker blues and things like that. And then of course the background. Interesting. This is definitely one of those fish that you would see on some exotic New World or something like that in the space exploration. But I do like it. So this is a parrot fish. Fish. That's a great way of spelling that. And then this one's like kind of cool. This is like okay, it's probably like a vampire or something like that. It's like butterfly stuff. She's like butterfly encrusted. But yeah, this is like really nice, and I like the different layers that they actually have with color and everything like that, and how that this person probably built on this. So this is a really really nice picture. I do like pictures of women quite a bit. Like I got some pretty interesting pictures of like nice soft colors and things like that. Those are nice, and especially like the. Let me see if I can find some here. Uh, just like nice soft colors, very vibrant. Let's change the view. I don't have anything bad in here, so at least not on this computer. Here we go. So this one of Multiple from Ghost in the Shell, or the commander from Ghost in the Shell. Like, look at these soft colors, how they portray, and like this is a lethal person. Like, you can freaking take you apart, hack you to death, so on and so forth. And then even pictures like this. This is really cool how this is like blends into the background. Very is very white is kind of what I was gonna say, but very vibrant and it really pops. So this is a really really cool picture. I like pictures like this. And then there's even this one which is really nice. Let's look at the girls from Naruto Shippuden, the one with the glasses. But I think her hair is a little bit more red. But I do like this one. Definitely when I get like a TV that will display my art and stuff like that, I'll definitely be using like pictures like this and selecting pictures that will not only just take up the whole screen, but start doing some other cool stuff too. And maybe I'll code that project in one of the streams here. And then even pictures like this, a little bit darker, purple, one of my favorite colors, black and purple are my two favorite colors, but purple is like my number one, and black is like my number one favorite color to wear. But yeah, I've always liked purple and stuff like that. So yeah, these are really cool pictures, and I always like these like soft images like this, or even this one's pretty cool. I found this one today, Majin Buu, like a super Majin Buu, freaking sick. This one is like, yo, where the hell? I don't even know where I got this from. I can look it up by the picture name. So if you guys want, like, you look up this picture name here in ArtStation, and it will you'll find this picture here and the artist, the original artist. But yeah, some really cool images here of Majin Buu. Super Majin Buu. Really, like something like this, I'd put in my little home gym and be like, all right, this is what we're going for. This is why you do your twists and such and things like that. So yeah, really cool picture. Really like menacing, but like fucking just sick. So going from like girl pictures like that to like freaking Majin Buu looking brawly as fuck. Before we get into the main part of what we're doing tonight, which is working with Postman. So it's going to be, hopefully I get to some coding tonight. I really should probably take out the live coding part of of the title sometimes because I don't always get to code. And it just depends on like what's going on and everything like that. But usually I like to show everything that's going on, the progression of the project. So since like Thursday, oh my God, I was working crazy on from Thursday all the way up until like Monday, Sunday going into Monday. And I'm talking like, I think Monday I went to bed at like 6 a.m. and then, woke up, did my meeting and, started my work shift at like 10 something. And I had to make myself go to bed at 6. Like I had to. But I was like going crazy with this project, and I went down the rabbit hole of Postman collections, and that's kind of the video I want to make tonight. I almost might make this video pretty short tonight. I say that a lot. Sound like Edward Anderson. But I also want to make this video short because I want to get back to coding this and doing some front end work. But what I'll probably do is one or two things here. So I use a template called Data Able. So this is the original template here, and I got this off of like Template Monster years ago, and I use it for like most of my projects. Nothing I really always publish and put out there or anything like that. But for most of the forms and anything else that I work on, it's usually this is the base, and then I chop it up, and it looks like nothing like this by the time I'm finished with it. And you'll see like the dashboard that I'm working on and some of the nav stuff. This actually, I will be using this dashboard, but you'll see I'll make subtle changes. Like these edges here are rounded, so I use the border radius and make it like border radius 10 pixels. So for instance, if we were to do inspect on this element, and that's the card element, and then you'll see if I do border radius, and then I'll do like 100 pixels, you'll see that like change drastically, and then I can just like cycle through that and then resize it, and all I'm doing is in the inspect tool. Let's bring that on screen here. But in the inspect tool, I get the actual element, which is somewhere. Yeah, it doesn't matter. All right, it doesn't really matter because I can't find it anyway. But I'll get the actual element and then I'll apply some element style. So this is the equivalent. If Richard Dixon, what's up, brother? Appreciate you joining as always, man. I hope you fixed those problems that you had the other day, and we're going to be going over some API stuff as always, because it's all back end over here. Front end is for the pretty boys, but we will be getting into front end stuff. So we're full stack, baby. We're full stack. But yeah, we'll be doing all that stuff too. Hopefully I'm just going to show this off a little bit in terms of like the interface that I've been working on, but mostly it's going to mostly all back-end centric stuff. JSON objects are beautiful. Arrays are beautiful. Those are beautiful. That's the beauty right there for me. So for here, border radius, I can just adjust this and pick it down to like probably 10 or something like that. So in that case, on this element, I have a nice little slight curve to it. I can increase the actual shadow to the element as well. So box shadow, I could probably go 20 pixels, 25 or something like that. And well, actually, hold on. Is that this? Yeah, maybe it's this. But you can see it kind of like, you can faintly see where the shadow is actually extending. You might not be able to pick it up on stream, but you can see where the shadow starts to extend a little bit for that and all the other items, because that is actually the CSS, or that's the class, or that's the card class. So yeah, I go through these things and I pick out little things, make little small changes. So we'll start with the login page. One thing that I did do is let's do inspect, and this one I have on another screen here. So let's change. Let's dock this to the side. Here we go. So on this, if I go to sources, and then I'll look at my public. I usually keep my stuff pretty clean in terms of my public folder. So all the CSS, all the fonts that I use, images, JS. So I had to change the whole structure of the CSS here, or change the whole structure of all the things that are called, because if you look at the original, there's just so much. Like there's assets, CSS, fonts, and then in fonts there's feather, right? But then feather has fonts as well, and it's just like, okay, then I have font awesome, and then I have data, and then or data, and then I have fonts for data. Like I like to put all those under one thing. I do understand why they do this in the template itself, but a lot of times what I do is I have to cut a lot of stuff out. Now that causes certain things to break, which is a problem that I had with this little element here, which slides out, and I'll be doing some stuff with that in terms of all the updates that will be entering in the back end via the API, but or maybe some other type of functionality. But you can see this is a responsive website. The toolbars and everything like that starts to change. You can actually have different orientations for all of this stuff as well. That gets included in your templates, but you have to know how to go through these and chop them. And then also one thing I do is I'll go through, like for instance, the element section, and here all the different elements that I have to, or all the different style sheets, I'll start including less, and then also include my own custom style sheets for some of my changes. So if I want to deal with something that's in the style.css, which is the main style sheet, then I'll make changes. I'll make a fat.css or the project name.css, and that's where I'll start to do all my other work in there, and then customize it, and then just give it the uh, you can override CSS or override a class or something like that that's applied to something by doing like an important. So for instance, if I wanted to do font weight, no, font weight 400 or 100, and then there's something else that takes precedence or priority over that, then I can just go important and use that keyword, and it'll take over, and or it will take priority or precedence over that, whatever is defined in the class itself. So that's a nice thing to do, and I usually do that in my own style sheet, so I don't mess with the main style sheet and kind of keep that quote unquote pure. But then I sometimes do break some stuff as well. So if we go over to this here, this is the original style sheet. Sometimes I'll, like, especially when I'm finished with the project or something like that, or I'm at a good point where I don't need this style sheet, I'll probably even minify this. So right here, I change the imports to where, change it because of the file structure. So in terms of where the CSS file lives it's relative to the actual CSS file itself. So you have to do like, double period to do previous directory, and so forth. And if it's like in the same directory, then you just put the file and that's it. Put the file name. So I had to change all that. And one thing I did mess up on is I took this line out, and then that messed up something on one of the sides there. All this is a part of the spreadsheet, as part of the template. So you see these things moving, and that's nice, right? But then you have to add the functionality of what this field is going to do, what this field is going to do. And I have a lot of this stuff kind of broken down already. But let's go to JS, and then there's the fat JS. So one thing I like to do is add a little bit of a creative touch that's still like programmatic, right? So every time I refresh this page, I want a new image to show up. So I have this function that I put together a while back, essentially, randomly picking an item out of the array. So I do this for some of my other projects in terms of my profile pick on the Growbox project website, or the growboxproject.com website. If you look at if you look at like my profile picture for me, it's never my face. It's always just like pictures that it cycles through. So I have an array of pictures or their names, and the file names. Sometimes I have like array of JSON or an array of JSON objects, and I only did that for for the project because I wanted to have the artist name. In this case, I paid for these icons, so I actually just use them. Or I pay for these icons so I can just download them. So I have all the names for all the different icons. I went ahead and like cleaned up all the icon names and everything like that. And then I say if window location path name is login or equals / login. So for instance, this actual URL here, you can actually parse this. Like you can get the protocol, you can get the actual, I forgot, I think this is like the URI or something like that is this whole thing, URI, URL. And then you can even get the path name. So if it's just / you'll get that. Or if it's / login or / login, whatever, and then you can chop that up, and then you can also write conditionals based off of that, and execute code. So in this case, I define my random picture. It takes the picture array, which is this here, and then it takes the ID of the div that is the target. So in this case, I'll do let random picture or random picture equal PA, and then essentially what I'm doing is randomly picking. I'm randomly picking and rounding, so it rounds down to a number. I'm randomly picking something times the length of the actual array itself. So it'll do math dot random, picks a number, right, and then times that by the length of the actual array, the length of the array, and then I do math.floor to round it down, and then that will equate to a number in the array. So I'll do like PA, and then if it's like 1 or 2, so it'll be like, if it's 1, it'll be this because it starts at 0. So if it's 1, it'll be this. If it's 2, it'll be this here, which is the third one, and so on and so forth. And it skips around because it should have if you really get into coding, you'll start to understand a little bit more about the random number generators that are in some of these languages and how their deficiencies and how they're not so random. They're actually quite predictable to a certain extent. So having a good random number generator is something that is going to be a big thing for you as you go along. I've touched on it in terms of like put my toe in the water on that stuff, but it's kind of like regular expressions. I'm not really good at it. I just know about it or know enough to say, okay, I kind of want this and I know what to search for and go from there. And then Google helps me with the rest. So then after that, I have a div in here, or I have an element. Inspect this. So I have an image element. That image element has an empty source. So there's nothing in this source on load of the page. And what I do is sources. I'll automatically put this in, right? In terms of the actual URL or the location of that file. And then I'll use a template literal string, or I put all that in a template literal string, and then random picture, and it'll be the name of the random picture that it selects. Or if it's like a JSON object, then I'll do some other stuff with it, just in case I have some other information that I want to present along with the that photo. So for instance, in another thing, I have a JSON object that has the name of the file, the artist name, and then a link to the artist page. And I use an object for that because I can do all of that in one little data structure. So that's a little bit nicer. And then I just, I always have that information, or I always present that information. So I give the actual artist their credit. And then after that, based on the path name, if it's / login or / register, it'll just do login image. And the div name is always the same. So that's static, or the div ID, I should say, is always the same. So login image, I could change it to something else, but like I could change it to random image. But these things share the same thing, where there's the register page, which is this, or it's the login page. And as you can see, it has changed. So if I go through and just press F5, you'll get another image every single time. And since it's cached, you won't see the loading and all this other stuff, and then also the nice how it grows and expands. That is all that's all via, I believe, CSS and some JavaScript as well, JavaScript runs all this, like these bubbles running in the background, and you could change the shapes and do all types of other stuff. There's some really cool login pages that are for free out there. That'll be like nice, clean, base, modern uh, images, or back what's it called? Not backgrounds, but nice, clean base templates that you can use. There'll be single colors, maybe gradients, and then there'll be some really nice ones where if you move your mouse around, it starts to do all types of other effects on it. One is an example of that is like PF Sense. Let's see that. I think he still has it. Let's see. So if PF, oh, okay, I guess they took it out of their website. But with PF Sense, you see all these like little things here with these lines. If you guys can actually see that, that used to be, there was like an effect that you would do, and you can move around, and it would show all of that for you. But I guess they got rid of it. Maybe it was causing too many resource issues for the computers and users, or they just changed. But this is a great open source firewall project. Been using this since PF Sense version 1.2.3. So I've been since day one. Like an old release. Like I used to do like PF Sense dual dual WAN, dual route, redundant routers and stuff like that, redundant router firewalls. Freaking PF Sense is legit, like the shit. I love it. So none of this stuff works, like it doesn't do anything, doesn't call any functions. There is probably an error. So like submit credentials, I'll have to define that function and get that from somewhere else. I already have all this code because I've used it for another project. There's not going to be much that's going to be special on the front end stuff. That's why I'm not going too deep into it. I will explain it on these codings on these streams here, but like for the most part, it's not me doing anything quote unquote new. I will show you some new stuff that I was working on, like that had me up for hours, and it was really cool. And actually, we'll break down some of the things that I did. But yeah, let's move on. So yeah, that's really cool. And the dashboard, as you can see, the soft round circles and some of the other things that I'm doing, changing up things in terms of like adding icons for stuff. And that's kind of like just making it a little bit more digestible, visually digestible and pleasing. So add a little bit of aesthetic to it, and putting some other stuff in place, like all the documentation pages, making sure that they open up in new windows instead of the same window, which I usually hate because I'd rather open up a new tab, especially since tabbing came out in Google browsers, which is freaking awesome. I think it was in Firefox browsers first, though. But yeah, this is like the documentation page, and until I make one just for this project, it'll just go here for now. But we'll work on documentation and have all that stuff linked up. Then GitHub, project repository, and then the actual TreeStar Systems repository for all the other projects. And we'll go through that. So here, and then need support. And this is kind of where it's like, okay, you want support and you want to do more, or you want to pay for more, at the root of everything. So that's like, this is the treestarsystems.com website. And I did this a long time ago now. Like, yeah, it's been a while since I did this. I haven't even touched this code in a while. And that project's been running very solid. And I think this is all, I don't know if I don't remember. I don't think this is a Node.js app. I think this is just like a single page website that I just put together and just like went crazy on and did a lot of cool stuff here, or used a lot of, I found a template. I don't design websites at all. Richard Dixon asks, how long you been working on this website? Which website you talking about? I just switched over. Is it the TreeStar Systems website or the FAT website for the project? Let me know on that one. Sorry, I didn't catch your comment when you made it. But yeah, so the TreeStar Systems website, this is kind of what I really want to get into and start doing more of. But I also, a part of what I'm doing here is providing content. I have used PF Sense for firewall, and it's great. Yeah. Appreciate you joining, Mig. Appreciate you joining, bro. But yeah, PF Sense is ridiculously awesome, man, and I've been using that for years, bro. Like, look up when version 1.2.3 came out. That thing was freaking insane. That was like, that's super old now, man. That was like the early 2000s. Oh, the FAT website. So the FAT website, I've actually, again, I I did the template. I started working with the template last weekend, and it hasn't been long. So honestly, the past 2 or 3 days, I've been chipping away at it. You know, every time, like sometimes I'll take a little break from like my job work, and then do all this, and then of course at night I go crazy with it, and then sometimes I'll do some other stuff. But this fat website, I've already had. I've been working on. I've had the template and some of the other stuff, some code that I copied from another project that I'm working on. So it's not something that I can say that I've put a lot of work into yet. I've just been working with getting this over and with all the different changes. Because when I put these websites and everything in place or use these templates come with so much shit that it's not even funny, and stuff that you probably won't use, but it has all the different, like let's look at this. So with data able, if I wanted to go to, oh, I mean, they give you everything. So charts, right? I have I have like not four. Let's reading this, but I have so many different charting options that I have available. I use AM charts. I love this. But with AM charts, you can do all these different things, right? So with AM charts, just using this and going from here, like doing all this stuff, man, like it's just a lot of stuff that I just will never use. I'm not going to use Chart.js, so it'll include all these different plugins. Now it's nice in terms of like, okay, now I can use this. I can, I know how it looks. Oh, cool. I got gradients here. I used to use Chart.js, which is like, it's really nice, but I use AM charts now. Was it Chart.js? Maybe it was Chart.js. But you can have all these different colors and things that it does, but it's so bloated in terms of what it actually does in terms of or what it actually takes up in terms of space. So I cut it down quite a bit, and most of what I do in terms of getting something started is getting the layout first, and then now what I do, since I use a templating engine for my backend, I use handlebars for Node.js. So if you guys are familiar with handlebars, or if you don't know about it, with Node.js, you have different templating engines. I think in Python, if you use Python and Flask, their web framework, um, Python they use like Jade and something else. What templating engines allow you to do is actually handle templates in a programmatic way, and in some cases in a more cut down way, to where you can actually split your website into parts or partials for handlebars. And then you can also do if statements in your template itself. I prefer not to do that. I use the JavaScript to do all that. So I use Vanilla.js, or I code in Vanilla.js. So I don't use like too many outside libraries unless it's like Axios to do API calls or something like that. But I use Vanilla.js for the most part to handle everything in what they call the DOM, or the document object model, I believe is what that stands for. Actually, let's look that up as always. DOM. Oh, that's a cool freaking picture. Look at that. This is a dude riding a rat with a blaster for hands. That's, I don't know how, I don't know what you do with that. Document object model is a program interface for HTML and XML documents. It represents the page so that the programs can change the document structure, style, and content. The DOM represents the document as nodes and objects. That way, programming languages can connect to that page. A web page is a document. Okay, so document object model. So you can actually interface with the DOM without using things like jQuery, which was a very popular library. I used to use jQuery quite a bit, and then I started getting really into Vanilla.js and using that for the past like 2 years now. I've been using Vanilla.js, or coding in Vanilla.js, or coding between the two. And I kind of just fell into that with some of the projects that I worked on. But now I just use Vanilla.js over everything and write my custom functions as needed. And it gives you a little bit more how would I say it? Gives you a little bit more flexibility. So I can do just about anything in that. And the Vanilla.js wasn't always around, or all this stuff wasn't available, and jQuery was the way to interact with the DOM and do all the special fancy stuff. You have to use jQuery for some libraries because they require jQuery. But for the most part, I code in Vanilla.js. And that's just, when I say Vanilla.js, that's like, excuse me. So if I go to sources, doing things like document.get element by ID. Those functions, that's a vanilla.js esque function. I don't know if it was, as I know it, that's vanilla.js. If you guys know otherwise or something like that, but interacting with the document or the DOM and then running those functions is built into most modern browsers nowadays, and they interpret vanilla.js, and this is how you interact with them instead of using jQuery and its syntax. With using like hash symbols for element IDs and periods and a name for a class or something like that. You have all the different DOM functions that you can actually interact with the DOM itself, the document. So short answer after the long answer, Richard. I've been working on this for a couple of days, but a lot of this work was done previously. So I always use this template for the most part. All right, so moving on. Yeah, you have to do a lot to split all this up, and with handlebars, you can do a lot in terms of what they call using partials to split up your template and to do other things to make it a little bit more manageable. Kind of like working with Node.js, where you have dependencies or something that depends, or you require a file. You can kind of do that with what's it called? You can do that with your what do I want to say? You can do that with your template. There we go. So for instance, I can do public. I have everything under pages from my, and it's in my view. I can actually I can define layouts, right? And then I only have two layouts, admin and handlebars. So admin, it has all the different navigation, and then the admin and handlebars, admin and login. So the register page, the login page uses the login layout, which has a lot less things in it. And then the admin page, all the other pages, dashboard, and so on and so forth, will use the admin layout. So then if I go to admin, and let's increase the font for you guys. So here it'll have all my header and footer information, but then you can see here, I cut out pieces and then I have a navigation portion of it, right? So these are all my menus and things like that. And then if I go down a little bit further, you'll see where I keep some stuff here. In fact, I'll probably take this out. I don't think I need this. Yeah, I don't think I need this. This is like the header. No, I'll probably keep that there because yeah, feather icon. Yeah. So I'll probably keep the actually I'll probably take this and put it in the navigation section, because essentially what that equals or actually is all this stuff up here. All this stuff here on the left hand side, the navigation, that's that. And then all this other stuff where it's the header section, that's all the like the breadcrumb menus and the drop down here, the search icon, and then some of the other stuff. I'll put that in navigation as well. And then all of that, essentially all that code, I'll shorten this up. Like currently it's 266 lines. I'll shorten this up by quite a bit by just taking all that away and just having it as navigation, right? So even this chat section that you see on the left and right hand side, or the right hand side, I should say, I'll be cutting that out. And then even the body of the page, I'll be cutting that out. And then some of my JavaScript here that I use for all of my pages, getting like, the IP address and all that other stuff, and having a div for that. All that stuff is here. So that makes it easier, because then when I have to make changes to navigation, unless it's like something where it's, a specific page I have to do navigation with, then all of that stuff is available, boom, right here in this one file. And it also cuts down on the amount of clutter in terms of working with this website. Because if I look at this website itself, even though it's very simple, there's nothing really on this page in terms of all the different elements. But if you have all the hidden stuff here, which is this little chat section, and I click here, and then you see all the different chats, I can make this work. I can actually make this whole thing work. But really, it's not gonna work the way it's shown here. I'll probably use this for updates. But if I do view page source, everything comes together. The body and all that other stuff comes together in all of this here. So I can cut that down. I'll also make it more dynamic. A lot of this stuff will be replaced by just divs with IDs, and then JavaScript will insert information as the page loads, and it'll make API calls as necessary and do all the page loading and everything else like that. But you can see where those layouts and then all the partials come together. It's three different things. So it's layouts, pages, and partials. Partials can be a part of pages, and pages can be a part of layouts. So your layout is pretty much at the top of the hierarchy, and that's kind of where you want to put everything. Now, you don't have to have any layout whatsoever. You can actually have a layout that's a blank file. But if anything, I usually, with my layouts, I'll put all the script information that I want for each page. Sometimes I use JavaScript to dynamically inject some scripts. And then I'll have the page, which is, the meat of, all of this. And then those page elements will call partials and, then form the entire page and go from there. All right, so enough of that. So we've gone through that. I think I've gotten through all the stuff I want to talk about with this. Maybe we'll get to the Postman stuff, which is what this whole stream is about, really. And then also we use like little icon sets here, such as feather, a feather icon set. So if you want like free icons that like these like little activity, or if you want a home, or if you want a pen, or if you want code, GitHub and stuff like that. These are really nice. And then they have bigger icon libraries or sets, such as Font Awesome. And you don't have to actually download these. I usually download them to the project, so they're within the project itself. And I have it rolled up in there. You can also install it via Node.js as well. But I don't usually do that. I usually have everything packaged into everything there, or into the project itself. So it takes up space, and makes it a little bit more to download. But I like doing that better, just in case there's anything wrong with that library, or anything happens. I know it's served from the actual project itself, and I like the project to be a nice little bundle. So I can go to their icon set. They do have free ones, and they do have like paid ones. This has actually gone up, or this is actually gone through a lot of iterations since I've used it. But if you wanted home or something like that, you have different houses, right? Caravan, and this is like a more mature icon set that you can actually use, and you can see there's the pro set. And then what's nice, the ones that are like grayed out are the pros that you have to pay for, but the free ones, you could look at them. And what's nice about these icon sets is that you can actually set different colors if you wanted to. So you can see like yeah, so if you wanted to do like this one here in that version, you can actually change the color of this. In fact, I think if you reload, I should get a different color. So yeah, I don't know how to change the color. It's actually within the syntax here. You can actually change the color here, and this is how you call it. And there's a couple other things that you can actually do. But I use feather as well, and sometimes I just use whatever's available in the template that I'm using. But yeah, so there's a lot of different icon sets that you can use. So last thing before we get into Postman, coding and like refining your code. Oh man, so I was going crazy. I was really deep. I was really deep into it. So it's like I was saying, like I went to bed at 6 o'clock in the morning on a work day, and then woke up for my shift and everything a couple hours later, and somehow made it through that day. But here I did some work in the core file in the core.js. And actually, no, we have to look at the history. So I had to do some regular expressions, and I was just like, I don't want to have to edit this regular expression, then also have a list. I want to give this thing a variable that is an array, or I want to give this thing an array, and then I want it to actually form the regular expression for me based on my regular expression format, which is the same, right? So I was like, how the hell would I do that? So in this case, you'll see my different commits here, and I did this because I wanted to show you guys the differences here. So convert fat vars items into regex for core core regular expressions, or regexes. So if you look at this, there's a lot. Put a lot of stuff into this. So I have this, what I call the fat vars, and the fat vars have a list, right? These are the account type lists. So I have retirement accounts, general investing accounts, crypto accounts, debt accounts, checking accounts, savings, credit score, right? So on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. But then I also have, ooh, where is it? I also have core regular. So yeah, here we go. But I also have this where I actually have all those same lists in a regular expression. But I'm like, I just want to update it from one spot, and then it forms the regular expression for me. So it's like, how can I do that? So I went through a couple tests and did a couple things, and I was just like, well, how can I actually, take this and form this into something where I can give it a regular expression, or give it a function that equals that one regular expression. For the account type validation, it forms the regular expression properly. So I actually had to do a for loop. So I want you guys to notice, though. Let's press F11. I want you guys to notice something here. For every item in this list, I have to make, or at one point, I was making a special for loop for that item in the list. But they're all arrays, and there's nothing special about them in terms of, okay, there's an array with a JSON. There's an array with that's made up of JSON objects, or there's an array that's made up of numbers or something else, or some other type of characters that have to be deciphered, or what have you. They're all arrays. So by generalizing pieces of your code, you can actually make it to where you'll make your other code a lot simpler to get into and work with. So I don't have to have like a for loop for fat vars account type list, right? I don't have to have a for loop for each one of these things, because how does that? We always have to think about scaling. What's next? What else do we have to do, right? We always have to think about, like, okay, well, we're coding like this now because it's just you working on the project and you're the only one working with it. But what about when other people want to add a list? So you mean to tell me they're going to have to add a list, or a list, or sorry, a key value pair, right? So the key will be whatever name, and then the value be an array to this here. Then they have to copy and paste the loop, or the for loop, for that new array to add it, and then say, change the name and make it unique, and then change it all throughout. She's like, what the fuck? Who's doing that? Bitch, are you crazy? We ain't doing that shit over here. We are too pretty for ugly work. That's how you have to think. That's what's up. That's what we're doing. Fuck it. I actually say that. I've said that in previous videos where it's like this is how we freaking code. We are too pretty for ugly work. We're too pretty for doing this ugly ass this is ugly code. I wouldn't even show my mama this code. You don't bring this type of code home to your mama. So change that, right? So how the hell do we change that? So first we get our proof of concept, right? In a sense, like we get this working, So now it's like, okay, I was having problems with asynchronous calls and all types of other stuff. One thing that's nice about JavaScript is that you can assign functions to variables, and the result of that function will be that variable, whatever it is, right? I'm sure you can do that in other languages, but I only really work with JavaScript now. I used to work with PHP years ago. But so you'll see all of this. It's like, okay, this is how I did it before. I made all the changes, and then I would have had fat vars here at the top. So then once I make a change here, I got to go down here to make this change. So now it's like, okay, well, screw that. Now I can just do it via function. So if I make a change here, then it should create this. But then if I make a change here, I have to add a whole new loop. It's like, oh, fuck that. We're not doing that. So it adds a whole bunch of lines, right? And one thing you'll see is as we go along, this file is, oh man, I don't even know how many lines this file is. It kind of tells you somewhere. It says 79, but I'd have to expand this, and I kind of don't want to. Oh, okay, it's not that bad. So we'll say, like, we'll start we'll see it says it's 252 lines, right? That's what it originally was. So now let's go back. So we were here at this commit. So now let's go into this commit here. Now we're looking a little bit cleaner, baby. We're doing some real sexy shit now, baby. Okay, we also made an error here, so we had to like take that out in terms of we add an extra comma, and that's not valid JSON, especially if it's like a strict JSON validator or something like that. So yeah, so we have a validation object, right? We have a function that says create validation regexes. Now we have one for loop, but what we have is that for loop is within another for loop that actually iterates through this JSON object up here, which is our fat vars. So fat vars here, take that, and then we're going to loop through that fat var, right? And then we're going to take the key from that, and then this is the actual variable that we're going through. And then now we're going to have another one that iterates through whatever that item is. In this case, we know it's an array. So we can do another for loop. We can do higher order functions like a for each, every, for each, every, and then there's a couple others, filter, map. But I've had problems with those recently, and I've defaulted to just using a for loop. If you're using other languages like Google's Go language, they only have one loop, a for loop. There is no while loop. There is no for each loop or higher order functions. There is just a for loop. And that for loop can do everything for you. Pun intended. Even though not by design. So you have a for loop, and then that for loop has another for loop within it. So as you can see here, the structure that we were using before in terms of, and you guys can go back and look at the other commits, but now I'm cycling through all the items in this, so I can just really just make edits to this here. That's it. Like I just make edits only to this variable, and eventually this stuff will come out of the database. Like I'm not going to have all, like I have these lists for retirement, general investing, crypto, debt, checking, savings, credit score. Somebody might have home loan or want to be more specific and say home loan, because these lists, I can actually filter by these lists. So I want it to be where in the front end, I can actually have, if I do, I think it's like, okay, hold on. 28.30. Oh, crap. Let's just get out of this. There we go. So I want it to be where if I go to forms, and then I can say, define lists, right? So we have an account type list, institution list, entry type list, access level list. So I'll have something there or front end that does all that for you. Because you and I can go in and do all this stuff through the API, but we can't expect normies to do that, like non-developers or even other developers to get through that. Like they're just not going to really do that. They don't want to do that. They don't want to get into all that. So let's go back to full screen here. So what we're doing, again, too pretty for ugly work. We don't want to have to go through all of this to make this regular expression here. So we have an anonymous function. This anonymous function runs, and then it evaluates to whatever this object's going to be. So let object be an empty JSON object, and then let validate regular expressions, and then we'll do create validation expressions, which is where we're calling this function here. That function takes no parameters, but we can always add some if we need to. And then we'll actually loop through that. So like in a sense, so as you can see here, this is going to produce a JSON array, right? So the validation object, right, which is an empty object here. As we loop through this, so we'll loop through all the different keys and the key value pairs in this JSON object. Right? Then we'll loop through the array within those keys, right? So a count type list and then its subsequent value or array. And then we'll iterate through that and increment as we need to. So we'll set I to 0, which will be the first item in the array. And then we'll also set the condition to which it's ran in terms of the loop, in terms of like how far it's going to go. So I is less than the length of the array. And then because that actually, the length will be, for instance, if there's 2 items in the array, that length will be a number 2 because it's 1, 2, but I will always start at 0. So as we can see here, because that's how it's defined. And then we'll have our conditionals, right? And this is how we build our regular expression. So with a regular expression, it starts off with a forward slash. And then after that, as I'm iterating through this, fat vars, key, and then the I. So like key is inherited, the I is inherited, and now I can start accessing those here in what's it called? While we're in our loop, and then I can start using conditionals to do all these things. So the first thing is I equals 0, always put a forward slash. I don't want it to run every time. I only want it to run when I equals 0, because that is the first iteration. That is the first item within that array. And it's going to do everything in order. In this case, since it's an array and it's a regular expression, I don't need it to be in order, but it's since it is in order, like, it'll just execute in order and not out of order. Most of the times arrays are sometimes better if you want things in order, because JSON objects don't always come in the same order, so you can't expect it to be in the same order. And the way you can get around certain things is by using a for loop and then conditionals within that for loop to say, if this, do this, so on and so forth. And you'll see where I think I used the match later on somewhere, probably not in this one. Anyway, so results. As you can see, result. So I'll have the an empty string here, because the regular expression is basically a string, and it's just interpreted by a regular expression parse function, pretty much. Or as a regular expression if you're using, like, say, dot match or anything else that uses regular expressions. It's just a string, and it's just formatted in a special way. So in this case, it's a template literal, right? I'll have the $sign, or sorry, not the $sign. I'll have the caret symbol, because I want it to be an exact match. So I'll have the caret symbol. The bookends will be a caret symbol, and at the very last, at the other side of the string, the other bookend will be a dollar symbol. I do not have to escape those. I thought I did. I thought I would have to probably do that, but I didn't have to do that in the template literal, because I wanted to make sure that this right here, when you're defining a variable within a template literal, it's encased in a $sign, curly braces, and that will evaluate to whatever that variable equals. So in this case, fat vars key I, right? So fat vars, account type list, and then this point in the array, right? So then boom, there's that. And then I have another conditional. So like if length -1 is not equal to I, and then put this. So essentially, if it's not equal or at the end, put a separator or a pipe symbol in there. And that will kind of make it like, it has a pipe symbol or separator, every one but the last one. On the last one, I'll add this to the string. So if length -1, or the length of the array, fat vars array, sorry, the length of the key, so in terms of this, in this case, the account type list, if the length of that array is length of that array -1 equals I, then that means that's the end of the array. That's it right there. That's the last thing it processes. So I'll do result. I'll add a forward slash, and that ends my regular expression, right? So now I've gone through this. After everything's said and done, I don't have to really await anything, because there's nothing to resolve. There's no promise to resolve. So then now I can just say, hey, return validation object when everything is said and done, because it'll run through this for loop and complete it, and then run through this. So that's kind of the hard thing about JavaScript, is some things are procedural and some, or not procedural. Some things are synchronous and some things are not. Everything's pretty much asynchronous. It's just you have to know what that you need to probably put async await on, and what you don't need to do that with. So in this case, I can get away with doing a for loop, and then the return at the end of it, it'll run this loop, cycle through it, and then run the rest of it here, instead of putting it somewhere else on the stack and going from there. But essentially, at its core, everything's asynchronous in Node.js or JavaScript. So all of that, have a function here. Then I'll do let object, and then I'll do validation regular expressions, which is this function here. and then I'll call that function. It'll return this validation object, right? So all my regular expressions and everything from these lists is created. And then now I can actually add that to object. So object key. So for let key in validation regular expressions, as you can see here, I have all these different keys here for everything. Actually, yeah. So I have the key, and as you can see, what I did is I did like a key dot replace. So anything that had list, I replaced it with validation, because the way it was named before was whatever the list name was, and then validation. So did the replace on that, and then converted this result into a regular expression. So this converts into a proper real regular expression here, and then it's treated as such in terms of making sure it'll parse that regular expression and then do any type of escaping that it needs to do to ensure that that string is a valid regular expression that can be used. Anyways, so going on, and here I loop through that resulting object, the validation object, and then as I'm going through it, I'll add it to this object here. So now this object here will, at the end of it, I'll have what I had before, which was all of this. So now I have one list, it loops through that list, and then it makes this variable here, or that it produces this same content here. So that's really nice. Like, like that's a really nice thing. So I put this note in here from a static object that doesn't expand. So for instance, if I wanted to add more stuff to it, I'd have to add it in 3 different places essentially. So to 58 lines that are a bit more dynamic, but require you to make changes, right? So I had I had all those different for loops for each item in the list, but I have to change it every time. And then at the end of it, to 28 lines, fully dynamic code that expands based on the keys in the fatvars object. So now all this stuff is done from this, or sorry, from this, and it loops through that and does whatever it needs to. And then I'm going to probably expand it even further, or I'm going to cut it down probably even further, or change it, actually I should say. This fatvars is actually going to be produced from the from a database call. So I'm going to have something, a list area where I go through all that. So I wanted to go through that, guys, and show you all of the things that I've been doing here in terms of making these changes, and it's really cool. So I think we are at 252 lines. I got rid of a whole bunch of stuff, as you can see here. Don't need this. I took out a couple other lines. If I look, yeah, so right here, all these different for loops, I got rid of all of those. Like, that's not necessary. So I went from 252 lines to 285 lines, down to 252 lines. Yeah, okay, I don't know why that's like that. So 252 lines, right? So like, boom, like that's a lot better. That's a lot more cut down. So from 285 to 252. So now let's go to clean up previous commits. Got rid of all the other stuff I didn't need anymore. And I guess it'll be at 252 again, right? No. Oh, okay. So once everything's cut out and I only have what I actually need, which is, oh, okay. Yeah, so all my validation stuff, my validation object that's made, all of that here, all that's done from that list as we just went over. And at the end of this, now my file is 128 lines. So cutting down those lines, less loading, less things that you have to do. And then I added a whole bunch of files in this and did some work here. So you can see where I made some changes. Also added some backend functions for authentication. So I got that going. So I'm going to be working on all of this pretty soon. Hopefully we'll get to code some of that tonight. All right, so I'm going to take a quick break. I'm just going to mute myself, and I'll be right back. I'm just going to get some water from the fridge here, and then we'll go into Postman and Postman documentation and things like that, and working with actual collections. I screwed up my Postman, so I don't know where. Is explore reports? Nope. Well, let me get this looking right first. I guess. Huh. I didn't know that was my workspace. All right. Oh, I got a workspace here. So, yeah, I'll let you guys look at this here. And where's the documentation? View documentation. So, we'll be working with this, which is hour into it. Now we're getting to what we're actually here for. All right. Well, I'll be back. All right. Back like I never left. Oh, sorry for the short break, guys. I gotta fill up the water pitcher too, because gotta filter some more of that good, clean, pure water. Well, it's pure now, at least. So with Postman, you can actually make what they call collections. Those collections can be exported and then distributed to other people. When you do things like this, it's really nice because essentially what happens is when you have when these things are exported, then now people can actually view and consume your API or understand better how to consume your API. A lot of times with documentation, you see the documentation is lacking. They don't do enough work in terms of telling you some examples or going through each and every function. And that's understandable, especially as a person that works on projects and works on the projects myself. Documenting everything after everything is done is like why it works. You don't need to know how it works, but that's a problem when you're working with end users, especially, and then even end developers. So other people that will be consuming your API and actually using it, you have to make sure that it's consumable. Let's make sure that audio is still working. All right. Yeah, that's it. Make sure I'm live here. Sorry about that, guys. I just always want to make sure that I'm not like just talking to my mic and nothing's going on. Yeah, good. All right. So, um, you want to make it easier for people to actually come into your ecosystem, your API, and integrate it into their own project, and then make it to where it's like, okay, I have your API. I know how to use everything. I have tons of examples. I understand everything that's going on. I don't need anything else. It's it's a lot easier to work with your API than it is to work with other projects, especially if you're a person that is a freelance coder or anything like that. By putting your API out there and making it a lot easier to work with, then you'll see where more people want to use it and adopt it, such as the Vue front end library or the Vue front end framework. Vue.js, Vue.js, for those that don't know. But with Vue.js, they have great documentation and make it easy for you to actually use and actually get into the ecosystem and start working on new pages and coding up a whole bunch of other things, or coding a whole bunch of things and using it more and more on all your projects. Now, this also turns into something that could actually be monetarily, advantageous for you, to where you can be making more money because more and more people are using your project, and then they might need some support. So now we have to say, oh, okay, well, no problem. I'll say you support at $125, $250 an hour to do any type of work. And you're going to want to pay for that support. One, excuse me, because my documentation is so good. So you already see that, hey, listen, this is having clean documentation is almost like having a clean home, having a clean yard. That gives you a nice presentation to your whole project. And it's like, oh, okay, this person knows what the hell they're doing and they're worth every penny because their documentation is legit. Or as one of my coworkers like to say, it's Gucci, it's legit, So, but these are the things that you want to do on a regular basis and get better at. And I'm trying to get better with these things. So I started working with this over the weekend, Saturday, Sunday. Again, it was like 12, 16-hour nights of just like straight coding. I was going crazy, taking little breaks here and there. But for the most part, I was deep into the code. And I made I made this, so like this is really cool. I really like it. What's nice about this is that along with examples, even though you may not use these different libraries, but if I wanted to do, it's a language curl, right? If I wanted to do C# or something like that, I can actually change that language. So if I wanted to do a get and then open request here, I can open those requests, do whatever I need to, and then I can also do sample code and stuff like that. I want to get to that here. So yeah, here we go. So for instance, in this case, I can define variables, right? And in this case, I don't want to like show off like some of my keys and stuff like that. So it's kind of like hard to like show you guys everything, but I can define variables in the variable section of this collection. So I can edit the collection itself and then actually define variables within that. And then I can export it. And they have two different variable sets. So one variable set. So for instance, let's look at root. I don't have anything on this one. And then I could choose edit. Oh, here we go. Variables. So you can add a variable here. So I'll call it test var. Oh, let's respect the stream here. Obfuscate var, right? And then I can do what they call the initial value and the current value. So the initial value, as you read here, let's hover. Right. This value is shared with your team when you share the variable in a collection, environment, or globals. And then current value, this value is used while sending a request. Current values are never synced with Postman servers. So this is the value where you would put your actual API key, and this is the value where you would put in enter API key, or a link to how to enter your API key, right? So I'll have all of that, and then, for instance, I might say, see my environment. I don't have anything for environment. So I'll probably do something like this, add, and then I'll do obfuscate var. And you can see here that this variable is accessible. So I have to do double curly braces on the open and double open curly braces and double closing curly braces. If I hover over this, it's unresolved variable. Okay, so that's not right. Let's save. And then let's see here. No, okay, hold on. I gotta get this running here. If I wanted to do this, watch, run, share, persist. Okay. So, okay. Sorry. So I have to open it up here. And then in this case, I have an API. So I can use obfuscate var. All right. So now it's accessible because I'm doing it under here. This is just me opening a random window here. So that's why it didn't actually resolve that variable. Also, what you can do is set environments. I haven't done that. I was doing that for some other stuff, or even using the Google Web Apps. I was using their environment variables or their collection and their environment with that collection. So that's really cool. That way it makes it easier for you to consume all these different APIs and run tests and then do your research and development. So obfuscate var. So then now I can see where this, if I look at it, it's just enter API key, but that's not my current. So, all right, I can go back and say, go back to the actual collection here. And then I could put in, it automatically takes the initial value and puts it as your current value. And I can put in the key as 1, 2, 3. Right. So now if I go here and hover over it, now I should, oh crap. Hold on. Save. All right, cool. Now I can go over here and then hover over it. Yeah, there we go. So now our current equals 1, 2, 3. Our initial is enter API key. So this is really nice when you're writing code and you want people to consume your API or anything else, and you're using Postman, and you're saying, okay, hey, listen, you can use this is almost like a test environment or a way to interact and do other things before you really kind of like dip your toe into or dip your rest of your leg into it. This is just the toe right here. So this is a great way of doing it, and you can do things like, okay, now that var could equal HTTP whatever, and then you can do API / endpoint, right? So let's do that here. As you can see here, if I hover over server API, my initial is server HTTPS server-IP and so on and so forth. So I can even actually have other variables in there, non-HTTPS, non-secure, and then I can have my current with my actual API or the IP address or name of my API, right? So it does all that, and then I have all my endpoints. Then going a little bit further, now I can start saying, okay, my naming convention is what type of endpoint it is or what type of method is used to access the endpoint, which is get. I don't really need that because of course it shows it here. So I have my gets, my posts, and my deletes, right? So I have like, usually you'll have more gets, in my case especially. I'll have more gets because I want different ways of retrieving that same information. But in terms of writing that information, I only need a couple ways of doing that. So I'll only add accounts, add entries, add lists. I don't want it. I don't want it to be the point again. Remember the list that we were doing in that working with those different arrays. I'm not going to be adding those lists. What's it called? I'm not going to be. I'm not going to statically stat I'm not going to statically define those lists. I want those to be dynamic, and I want those to be entered by people. Now, if they wanted to go with the default list, they can go with the default list and then add lists as they go on. And you just have to program those things, those little nuances and stuff like that. But you give them a quote unquote starter pack, and from that starter pack, then you go from there, right? So in this case, I do the get entry point. So even though this is the get method, I'm sorry, I was totally wrong about this. I got confused here. It's the get method, but in terms of my API, I have /API /get. So if I wanted to get something or retrieve it, I'd use that endpoint. If I want to add something, it'd be almost like a post. And then if I wanted to remove something, it'll be removed. So those are words that humans can understand, but essentially it's a get endpoint. I'm sorry, I was getting confused with that. So that's how I'm doing it. And I'm defining, as I'm going along, I'm defining a new way of writing APIs or my standard in terms of writing APIs. You can go a little bit more complex. You might have other things that might be necessary. You might have dumber systems that may not be able to actually do a post. So you have to, in a sense, do a get to an API endpoint, and it acts like a post. So you can do things like that if you wanted to. All these endpoints and everything like that. Just because it's the get method doesn't mean you can't send information to it. It's just different in the way that you send information to it. So mostly with a get, everything is in the actual URL itself, and you might have a long URL, but that URL can actually set data. But if you have a post, you usually want to, if I wanted to put in a new account, for instance, I'll have all of that in the body. So this brings me to my next thing as well. Or actually, we'll not jump the gun too quickly. We'll get to that. Um, with this collection, I can have certain things saved. So server API and then account type. So in this case, account type, I just put that there as a placeholder, but I can always change it if I ever needed to. It's expected that you would change that, right? And then, or if anything, if I say account type, I would have a variable, and then that variable might actually serve as an explanation of what's actually going on and what's expected in terms of the entry, right? So now we get to the post. If I save this, it'll actually save this body as a test. So that's really nice because now someone can actually go to this endpoint. This is an add an account endpoint. These are the things that you actually need to add an account with. So if I put in something like, oh, come on, here we go, right there, institutions, and I send it, well, it's going to have a failure, right? And I worked on error handling a lot over the weekend and also generalizing functions like you saw with the breakdown that we did in oof, the breakdown that we did in in GitHub. Right. So we went through all of that, but I did a lot of work and a lot of generalization code to make it to where I have like one main function that does everything. And it's just repeatable code for all these different endpoints. Let's show an example of that. So if I did nano server controller API and then add, so my add.js code is pretty much the same. I have a main function. Is this the same? No, my posts are different because posts usually have different information, and that's a little bit more detailed. But my gets are pretty much the same. Yeah, there we go. So I have a main function here. So for account endpoints, right? Anything that has to do with an account in terms of getting it, all the error handling is the same. So if there's any issues, it'll return a failure and then give me an empty payload, give me a timestamp. So all that stuff's defined. And then all I have to do here is an asynchronous function. All I have to do here is call it. Then I can also add conditionals. So if param string is all or anything like that, then I'm going to change this query object accordingly and then enter it into here, into the actual the query, the actual MongoDB query. And then the callback status and all this information, you'll see all this here in terms of like what I have to do, because essentially all of the same stuff, I just looked at the pattern. And again, programming is about pattern recognition. So you're looking at this and you're like, okay, well, I see this pattern here. This is kind of constant. I mean, why is that always the same? Can't I just do this in one function? So, and that's exactly what happened here. I have a set, once I defined all these functions and saw that there was little to no difference, I refined it even further. Instead of having all these lines here in one, all these lines here in each and every endpoint, I just define it up here and pass it a couple parameters that are actually the same. Also, I defined this request. So request.params.user input. That user input was always the same. The only thing that would change would be, say, for instance, maybe get account type or get, in this case, account type, or get all in this case, right? And then params var would be all / there's like, let's show you. So get account all. So as you can see here, that so get and then account and then / all. That all is the user input variable for the request params, right? So if I go back to here, you can see how that all works and fills in. As you can see, probably the only thing that changes, it's still a get endpoint, but it's a / account / type. And then the user input, it's still the same name, but now you're getting the actual account type. and whatever that variable is, and then I could pass this and run conditionals on this. So if the first parameter in this case, which is request param string, if this is that, then I can go ahead and do something else, or request params variable, which will be this user input. Then now, based off of that variable, I can do other things. So if it's request params variable, if request param string equals all, then I can go from there and then put the request param string, and I can run all these different things there and do whatever I need to, and it makes it a lot cleaner in terms of my endpoints and a lot less cluttered. In this case, for instance, the entry endpoint. Oh, okay, so all this is all the account stuff, like, getting account by type, by institution, by UUID, by name. All that stuff is pretty much basic, right? And then we pass our callback as well. Now we get to the Coinbase stuff. Even the Coinbase stuff is pretty basic. There's not much that needs to be done because of the way that I wrote the custom the Coinbase code. That it's pretty much always the same. Or there's pretty much not a lot of stuff is handled within the function itself, and then I just have to handle errors within it, and that's just how I decided to write that code to make it usable in other places. But the one thing I changed is now I have a raw endpoint. So I get the data that's raw. And then I also have, or the live data that's raw that has everything. And then I also have the filtered data. And I'll mostly be using the filtered data because I don't need everything. But the raw data takes a little bit longer to get. And there could be resource issues. So it'll be something where that's not taken up all the time. It'll mostly be filtered data that I'll be getting from a regular basis, or on a regular basis if I want something live, if I want live numbers. Then I do my entry endpoints. So anything in terms of like getting an entry, like an update entry, a finance tracker entry, or anything else that I need that I usually get from my spreadsheet, I'll have some get parameters for that. And then with those get parameters, sorry, not get parameters, but I'll have different get endpoints with different parameters that it might take in the function, and I'll have it all here. All my error handling is handled in the same fashion. The only difference is the reason why I have a different function for the most part is it might be a different query. It might be different things that I want to take out of that query, or might be things that I want to add into that query, and then a different resulting object that's sent back or sent to the front end once the API call is completed. And we have all of those, and then everything is defined here, all my 4 different entry endpoints for getting. So that's the backend code, right? But again, all of this now is defined here, and you can see everything. So if I wanted to, I can do send. It'll resolve this server API, and this will probably end up in an error here because it always has a problem with the first connect, and that's just because of the VM. Oh, no, it actually worked. Look at the ant. I was so wrong. This is filtered. Actually, no, I was right. Yeah, it did error out. So it did show me like everything here. Also with the filter, it shows me the error, but then it takes out things like the API key and stuff like that. So I had to write code to make sure that that gets taken out, and that's all handled in the custom Coinbase code, and that's just how I wrote that. But if I send it again, I should get it this time. There we go. And that's just on the box itself. Oh my God, 30 grand. Jesus. Oh God. Oh God. Cryptos, why are you leaving me? Why are the gains leaving me? I did recently convert some Stellar Lumens to Ethereum. So I should have more stuff in here. One thing, yeah, okay, it doesn't do the count here. But yeah, so now I can see where I have F2. And this is a good test too, because now I can see, okay, I have more in my ADA wallet. So I got like $3,000 in there now, or $3,800 in there now. It's like 4,000 earlier today. XLM, and then now I should also see, boom, Ethereum. So regular Ethereum, non-staked Ethereum, all that's right there. Yeah, so a lot of work's been done in that, and that went down, man. I put $1,000 into it, and then after conversions and everything, it was probably like 960 earlier. So now it's like 877. Guys, this is like this is the time that I'm definitely going to be buying more coins and getting more into it as best as possible. Like I literally forego or I kind of skipped paying, or I paid less on my credit card. I'll take the monthly hit in terms of interest charges and everything because the gains are outweighing that. It'll outweigh it in the long run. Do have to find like a night job, so definitely have to get one of those. All right, so all that's done and we're good to go on that. So now we can see with add account we did a test here and put institutions in there, and I showed you all the error handling that's done on the back end and how that is just mainly one function that takes three different parameters. The first two are like the account type string or what the endpoint is. The second one is like the request parameter string, whatever the request parameters are that are coming in, and then the other one is a callback. So, and I could probably change that and cut that down even more. You can convert that to a JSON object. I didn't do a JSON object because like after three parameters, then that's when I start to like say, okay, yeah, we need a JSON object for this because I'm not about to write like 4, 5, 6 parameters for a damn function and have to keep track of all those. I'd rather just write a JSON object and then pick and choose what I need out of that JSON object within the function itself. And it makes it a lot cleaner too. And then you just put in like OBJ and that should stand for object, or you can write it all the way out if you wanted to. So in this case, these are all the things that are happening in here. There's validation that's going on, which is giving us this information here. You can see like institution is required, institutions is not allowed. So I didn't have institution, but then I have institutions, and like it gives me the error. It gives me the errors based off of the schemas that I defined, and that was in a couple videos. I think Tuesday or Thursday, last week Tuesday's or Thursday's video with schemas. So I'll send this, which is the right object. Everything's defined properly. For instance, let's actually make a correction. So in fat vars, we had, not a correction, we'll make a change here. In fat vars, we had all the lists and we had everything defined and we had a regular expression that matched exactly that list. So let's make sure that still works. I know it does, but I'm gonna do it anyway. So institution selection is invalid because that is not the right one. Eventually, I can have it to where a lot of that stuff gets resolved and probably even gives an example of all the proper institutions. So that might be something that I want to add once it starts pulling all of that information from the database, right? As opposed to pulling it from fat vars or something like that. And I can even have it pull from fat vars as well. But either way, the code will still work. And that fat vars array can either be pulled from a statically defined JSON object or array of JSON objects or JSON objects with arrays. Or it can be pulled from the database, which has that same structure. So I can do all that, and I probably will be doing all that just to make it a lot easier for the front end consumer. So then they know like, oh, okay, that's the wrong. I mean, like I can do mass mutual and all that other stuff. And you can see that, hey, that's the wrong one. It's not matching mutuals, it's matching mutual, and you just spelt it wrong. You dummy. So let's go ahead and choose send. Oh, account already exists. Well, I guess. Oh, let's see if I can do a savings account, right? So savings. All right, cool. So we have our UUID for an account. So success, account has been successfully created. I always send a status and a message, give it a timestamp. And then from here, I could take that account UUID, go to our get account UUID, right? And then actually put that here, and then I can go ahead and get it. And boom, there we go. All that stuff that we just put in. Oh, well, what is that? That's kind of weird. Why is test account or account name in all caps? Because I wanted it that way. So one of the things I do is to make sure we normalize or sanitize data, we'll run it through a preprocessor of some sort. That preprocessor do things like make everything uppercase, probably even take things out remove spaces or not accept strings with spaces, or what have you. But you can see here that I upper or I or even if it has spaces, replace all space characters with dashes. Or in my validator, I say alphanumeric, so it's only A through Z, 0 through 9, right? And then it could be capital as well, like A through Z, lowercase and capital, which you do have to define in your regex, or else it won't, get it. And you can define that any number of ways. There are shortcuts in terms of how you can actually define that with, like I think D for date or something like that. That's or D stands for date, and that actually is a valid date or something like that in certain regular expressions and how it's interpreted. But you can see here that we have our account UUID. I'm not returning the actual database ID. I'm not returning anything else. I'm just returning just this here. So that's really nice. I can actually do some updates on, eventually I want to do like a put endpoint, and then I can actually do updates to the account. So it'll give me all the account information, and then I can actually do an actual update to the account itself. So it won't be a post, it'll be a put. And then that put will have a different function that does whatever I need it to in terms of updating any one of these accounts here. Right. So, and it'll have some checking in there as well. And then if I wanted to, as you can see here, the only thing I don't like, and this is something I just have to do myself, but I have to get in the habit of course, not saving this because it'll save it to the collection, and I don't want it to do that, especially if it's like getting it ready for export. But I'll just Control Z, and then I should just duplicate this tab if anything, just so I can have that there and make sure that if it gets or it doesn't get saved or anything else like that. But then I can go to another endpoint like the all endpoint and then send, and now I can see all my accounts. And one thing I did do is with the UUID, let's see, I think it's Y here. As you can see, I have an underscore, and then I actually have the date in seconds or milliseconds since epoch. And I did that because even though this is supposed to be randomly generated, I actually had it like in a very small sample set or small sample set. Uh, I actually had a repeating UUID, and I was just like, "Yo, what are the odds that this damn UUID will repeat itself like that? That's crazy." Because these are generated at generated when they're put in. It's just like, how the hell? So I added this as a way to make things a little bit more unique. I did the second since epoch, so I can even see when it's created. It's still here in this timestamp. In some cases, this will be different than this if it's off by a millisecond in terms of when the computer processes it, because this is not actually assigned to a variable. This is actually just date.now parentheses, and that's just the function. It'll give you the date. But if it's executed at the same millisecond, then it should give you the same number, but it won't always be the same number. And in some cases, what I might do is this UUID will stay the same, which I don't want to change that, because we'll be pulling from that and searching based off of this UUID to resolve account names and other things. But I might do a timestamp where the last update or something like that. So I might have a timestamp that says create timestamp or created, and then I might have a timestamp of updated. So when it's last updated, so I can see and track that information. And that's kind of really big in things like big data or big data sets or sets of big data, where you want to see where people added and updated certain things and what they updated, when they updated, and maybe even have versions of their data as well and have like a version state, if you will. So yeah, I had to go through all that, and I was just like I was plugging away at this, man. I was like in the zone, and really these streams have been helping me with that. So I've really been doing well with this, and this has been a much needed change, kind of like getting my tenacity / hunger back. So I'm really, really, really happy about that. All right. So yeah, after that I go through, remove. So if I wanted to take that account and put in the UUID for that account, I can remove account by UUID. I only offer that. I do not offer remove account by name, just in case any names are the same, which that shouldn't be the case because I actually check for the names being the same. Um, but just in case that, that gets through somehow, I only allow you to delete via UUID. So in this case, I'll go ahead. This does not require a body or anything like that. It's all done here, and it just takes that information from the this will be considered user input, and then it'll do a database call and then just do an actual remove. So I'll send that, and then it does their count removed, and this is my payload, and this is just from what's it called? Not JavaScript, from MongoDB, and it gives me the result. And I can put anything else in the payload, but for the most part, I give this payload raw like this, and then it gives me my delete count. So then if I wanted to, I can send it again, but you can see success, account removed, because that is a success, not a failure in any sort. And I could do a send again. Failure, no matching account exists because no account exists for that anymore. So for instance, if I went here and did a get and did send, all right, so failure, no matching account. And if I go here and go to my all endpoint, I have two accounts. One is the savings account, and then guess what's gonna happen? I'm gonna send it, and it's not gonna be there no more. So that's I mean that's basically how that works. It's a little bit on the boring side, right? But at the same time, like these things are really big in terms of when you're working with all of this stuff and you're yeah, you're working with all this stuff and you're just like testing it out. This means a lot. You have to start really getting used to getting into all of this code and looking at these data structures and finding the quote unquote beauty in it. And once you start seeing that, one thing I like to do is when I design this stuff in terms of the back end, then that helps me better design the front end. And then even the front end will drive some of the back end code. So now I'm thinking like, okay, well, what do I display here? Okay, account name. Maybe I have all the updates here or something like that, like all that stuff. So that's what I'm looking at in terms of when I'm like dealing with all these different things. As we go further with Postman and using the collection, I can export this to I think it's like a JSON file, and then that JSON file can be distributed to people, uploaded, updated, things like that. That's really nice to actually have. And then you can fill in certain information such as account variables and such. So if I click here, you can see with the documentation, where is it? It's here. There we go. So with this documentation, I can see like, what language is written in. So in my case, I can do Node.js, or actually this is how you would fetch most of this stuff. So I can say, yeah, I could do like a Node.js Axios if I wanted to, and then change that as the language for this stuff. And then if I wanted to do open a request. Oh shoot, no, that's not what I want to do. Hold on. What's nice is is it here? Give me a second. Do send as download. Uh, there's a way you can view this in the actual language that you're using. And you could save things like enable SSL verification. I turn that off in my case because I don't have a valid cert. Visualize, preview, raw, test, cookies, headers. Cookies ID. I'm trying to find. Yeah, here we go. All right, cool. So in this case, you can see here, it'll actually tell you how to run the code. And when I set the language here, it changes that for me. So then with this, oh, where was that? Here we go. So you can see the code snippet, and then I can even do like, okay, how would that look as a curl request? How would that look as a Node.js native request? So I can see all the different ways of writing this code. And by having this documentation and having these collections in place, now I've made it to where it's like, oh, okay, the person just shows code snippet, Node.js native, and then not everybody knows about this. Even myself has been ignorant to this, or just totally been oblivious to this here. I've had it to where it's like, oh wow, I can do all of this and it has everything for me. I can just dump this in a file real quick and then go ahead and run it as a test, dissect whatever the output is, and then say, oh, okay, this is how this works. This is how this works, so on and so forth. So that's really important. That's really good, and it makes it a lot easier for integration and adoption into someone else's project. And it could result to more money for you over time because now this extra work that you've been doing, you can put this in place, and it makes it so much easier to work with when you're working with all these different projects, because now you have examples for everything, and it's not like you have to have exhaustive or exhaustive exhaustive. You don't have to have exhaustive documentation, because the collection is your documentation in a sense. So if I go back here, let me close this here. So if I go back here, then I can see everything, and then I can actually have where I put in information, and I can show you how a failure is going to look. I can put in information, and I can show you what lists are the default, and then I just have to make sure I go through this every so often and put in the information that's necessary. So put in the information that is required to make sure that this documentation lives on and is updated on a regular basis. So if I look at all this, look at all these, I can do my success and all my other messages and everything else like that. Or sorry, I can see my success, and then I can see like, okay, this is a whole bunch of different records that are produced. Um, Even like I should have the count. Okay, no, I didn't do the count on this, but I can change this as we go along. So that's one thing you have to do, is just keep up to date on your documentation. And as you and your project grows and your company grows, you can just have somebody that says, hey, listen, man, I need you to look at the documentation and make sure all of this stuff is correct. Oh, and this is cool too. I never looked at this. So I had made all this stuff here, but you can see where it actually has a set test object for the body. So it has all that stuff, and it's already saved for you. So that's really cool, man. That's super freaking awesome. So you can see this is, if I wanted to enter an account or something like that, I can have just the add an entry or something like that. So I can do all that stuff there. And then, and here's the list. So I have the list name, and then here, and then I have the list body itself, which is an array, right? And then that will actually translate to the fat vars and everything else like that, and putting all that together. So yeah, it's really cool working with Postman and working with different collections, and also working with this documentation piece and going a little bit further into it. We didn't get to do any coding tonight. I'll end it here. And drink some more water and chill for a second, then get a workout in. Did arms on Monday. Didn't do anything last night, but I'll do arms again tonight. I think I want to do like double up on my days. So if I do arms one day, the next workout will be arms again. I'm back up to benching 205, and I can rep that like 5-6 times. So that's really cool. I'll be up to 225 in no time. So that's working out well so far. My shoulder's feeling a lot better, like probably the best my shoulders ever felt, just because I'm doing exercises on it on a regular basis. So it's not really weak. And, I'm just feeling a lot better with that type of stuff. So everything's good. Oh, tomorrow my grass gets cut. That's kind of cool. I'm kind of like excited about that and seeing how that's going to look. And hopefully I'll get a 0-turn lawnmower here pretty soon. Got to pay off some stuff first, and go from there. But I hope everything's going well with you guys. I hope you're spending time with your family. My brother actually came down from Tennessee last night, and then stayed over until this morning and left. But it was really cool to have him here and seeing him walk around, and he's like, whoa, this is really cool, and so on and so forth. So I hope you guys are enjoying your space, your environment, the tranquility, finding tranquil spots, finding spots where you can relax and think about your life, think about your day, and think about your future moves and other things like that. So I hope you guys are finding peace, enjoying that peace, and doing what you can to protect and increase your time in that peaceful state or environment. As always, if you're not taking what I say with a grain of salt, you're low on sodium. In some cases, that's good. But in terms of researching, believing people that are on YouTube or anything else like that, I think that's a bad thing. Always do your research. Talk to people. Talk to other people in your environment. And make sure you're doing what you can to make sure all your bases are covered. As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Peace.